So what this then taught us was it was actually the peripheral elevation of insulin that in and of itself can drive insulin resistance as well. When you don't have all these other factors controlled, you just elevate the level of insulin in the vasculature, as a case in type 1 diabetes. You see similar levels of insulin in people with type 1 as type 2. And when you actually do advanced insulin clamp models of insulin sensitivity, you see the same levels of insulin insensitivity or insulin resistance, despite not having the excess body weight that people with type 2 diabetes often have.
So it's essentially telling you that hyperinsulinemia, just the chronic sort of circulation of it, is ultimately the problem.
It's not only a big problem, but you're also learning a lot about where the insulin is and the impact it has. So if you eat, a loaf of bread, right, and it elevates glucose levels and your body releases insulin, a lot of that insulin is initially going to the liver. It is estimated that about 3/4 of that insulin is immediately gobbled up by the liver and takes that glucose and binds it into, or causes insulin binding, causes the glucose levels to enter and then ultimately be stored as glycogen. And that's potentially life-saving in low glucose environments because the liver releases insulin to maintain blood glucose homeostasis and ultimately life. And so both the absence of insulin, the abundance of insulin, but also what we can learn about being able to control levels of insulin in type 1 diabetes, and then seeing variable levels of glucose, we can learn a lot about the impacts, not just of insulin, but also the direct impacts of glucose.
So I want to pivot for just a second and go kind of to administration of insulin. And if you were to take a bolus of insulin and you were to also eat a bunch of fat, would you store that fat? And I think what I'm kind of alluding to is, like, insulin is a storage hormone. So independent even of calories, in that moment, can insulin drive in the storage of fat as well?
This is a very interesting question with a lot of nuance. And I would argue it's about the relative amount. Okay. Yes, in a single meal, if you administer insulin, you are going to change enzymatic processes for an acute window of time. But that acute window of time is the postprandial window, which is not 24 hours. So it's what's happening over the 24 hours, the cumulative effect of that matters. Yeah. So it's almost like a term I use is senoidal curve. So this almost like this up and down. It's not a linear line all day, at a set level. It is a rise and valley that occurs, and that's actually a common process in many aspects of our physiology and biology.